In the annum 10,191, advanced space travel allowed humanity to explore various planets within a unified empire. Arrakis, a harsh desert world, possesses the exclusive resource known as spice, crucial for longevity and interstellar travel. Noble houses vie for control, with ruthless outsiders harvesting spice by night and oppressing locals. The Harkonnen clan, present for years, now dominates spice production, surpassing even the Emperor in wealth. The Fremen, locals, resist the spice harvesters, but lack the strength to prevail. Suddenly, the Emperor expels the Harkonnens from the planet without explanation. On Caladan, Lady Jessica encourages her son Paul to practice the Bene Gesserit power, called the Voice, for mind control, though he struggles. Paul conceals dreams of a young lady named Chani. Arrakis poses dangers like sandstorms and colossal sandworms, the Fremen prize spice, essential for the Empire's star navigation. Later, Duke Leto and his son Paul receive the Change Herald, bearing orders from the Emperor. House Atreides is to govern Arrakis. Duke Leto consents, sealing the agreement with his signet. Paul confers with Duncan, the Atreides swordmaster, requesting to join him on Arrakis, but Duncan refuses, fearing punishment. Paul shares his prescient dreams of Arrakis and Duncan's involvement with the Fremen, but Duncan remains skeptical. Undeterred, Paul pleads with Leto for permission, but Leto insists Paul must accompany the family, as he anticipates impending conflict and sends Duncan ahead to ally with the Fremen. Paul later trains with Gurney, the House Atreides war master, using force field shields in a duel, ending in a draw. Gurney warns of the Harkonnens' ruthlessness. On Giedi Prime, Rabban tells his uncle, Baron Harkonnen, that their ships have left Arrakis, leaving the Baron fuming. However, the Baron and his trusted associate Peter enigmatically claim that a present isn't invariably a present. In Caladan, Jessica wakes Paul to meet Reverend Mother Gaius from the Bene Gesserit school, intrigued by his dreams. Dr. Yue checks Paul's health, discreetly warning him about the Bene Gesserit's dual agenda. They proceed to the Reverend Mother, where Jessica signals Paul to remember his training. Inside, Gaius orders Jessica to wait outside and compels Paul to kneel using the voice. Gaius directs Paul to insert his hand into a container, while a lethal needle hovers near his throat. Jessica recites the invocation against anxiety, helping Paul withstand the pain and see desert visions while holding his head high. Paul successfully clears the examination unscathed, earning Gaius's warning that he must control his impulses, for his maternal heritage gives him excessive power. Gaius inquires about his dreams, prompting Paul to recount the desert girl. After Gaius departs, she reminds Jessica of the taboo against training males, explaining the necessity of Paul's test. Jessica had been instructed to give birth exclusively to daughters, but had faith that her offspring might become the selected savior due to her pride. Overhearing their exchange, Paul criticizes the Bene Gesserit's clandestine political influence, but Jessica clarifies their mission to produce a potent mind-bridging space, time, past, and future. Believing Paul might fulfill this role, he feels melancholy, sensing he's merely a pawn in a larger scheme. Their arrival in Arrakis is met with joyful cheers from the Fremen, who hail Paul as the Messiah in their tongue. After crossing the desert to the walled city of Arrakis, Paul learns more about the planet. To evade sandworms, the Fremen employ the sand walk, a walk mimicking desert sounds. Suddenly, a minuscule hovering assassin's device infiltrates, but Paul crushes it when a servant enters. The guards discover the assassin entombed within a wall, biding his time for an opportunity. A Bene Gesserit envoy conveys an emperor's message to Baron Harkonnen and Peter, pledging secret reinforcement with elite Sardaukar forces. Their directive: spare Jessica and Paul, and eliminate Leto. Harkonnen initially agrees, but later instructs Peter to eliminate the entire family. Leto's council decides to inspect the sabotage spice silos, awaiting the Judge of Change's oversight. Duncan arrives, sharing his mission. During a 4-week stay with the Fremen, he uncovered their vast numbers on Arrakis, including some living underground in undiscovered tunnels. Duncan introduced Stilgar, the Fremen leader, to the Duke. Stilgar's spitting, a sign of respect, was reciprocated by Leto. Stilgar expressed concern about outworlders exploiting spice without giving in return. Leto promised to end their suffering. Stilgar accepted this honorably but couldn't stay. Duncan revealed Fremen tech, including a magnetic-resistant paracompass. Subsequently, Leto and his associates come across the Changer Kynes, nearly provoking the guards to attack her behavior. She inspects their vital still suits for desert survival. Kynes observes Paul's unorthodox boot style, inquiring who taught him. He simply claimed it felt right. Meanwhile, a spice-harvesting crawler and a lookout spotter operate, wary of sand waves hinting at worm movement. Shields are impractical due to worm attraction. Kynes signals for a carryall to rescue the crawler, but a malfunction prevents the retrieval. Leto decides to employ the 3 aircraft to save the crew in peril. Upon landing, Leto instructs his crew to deploy shield generators to clear space near the crawler. He then radios his men to disembark. The carryall departs as the worm approaches. Paul guides the crew toward the aircraft, but falls into a trance, freezing in place. Just as Leto prepares to leave, they come to the understanding that Paul is not on board, and the menacing worm draws closer. Gurney snaps him out of it, and they sprint as the worm surfaces, inducing the sand to subside. They reach the aircraft just in time, watching the sandworm engulf the crawler. Back at the base, Leto and Kynes discuss possible sabotage by the Harkonnens regarding the old carryall. Later, Yue examines Paul, assuring him he's spice-sensitive. Paul confides his vision to Jessica, recounting desert scenes, war, and an unexpected kiss with Chani. Startled, Jessica discovers she's pregnant. On Salusa Secundus, Peter oversees the Sardaukar army's departure. At night, Yue administers a drugged drink to Paul. Mysterious gunshots kill guards and disable the base's shields. Leto awakens, sensing trouble, and embarks on an investigation. Leto stumbles upon a lifeless servant alert security and activates his shield. He uncovers a dagger-wielding victim before a poison dart from Yue incapacitates him. Gurney awakens, noting the shield's failure, and spots an imposing enemy ship. Explosions ensue as the base is bombed, and enemy transports deploy troops. Gurney's forces engage in close combat. At the main steps, Atreides soldiers valiantly resist invaders until they're surrounded and annihilated by Sardaukar forces. Leto, immobilized, learns from Yue of a pact with the Baron. Leto for his captive wife. Yue implants a toxic tooth in Leto's mouth, forcing him to pick the right moment to eliminate the Baron. Meanwhile, Duncan secretly eliminates enemies, finds the noble family gone, and escapes. Simultaneously, Paul and Jessica are abducted and flown away by the Harkonnens. They discuss harming Jessica, and Paul's attempt to use the voice fails. Deep in the desert, soldiers eject Paul. Jessica signals him to use the voice. Paul successfully wields it, prompting the soldier to free Jessica, who uses the voice to turn on the others and kills her liberator. They watch as their aircraft is remotely sabotaged and the city burns. In a survival kit with an Atreides beacon, Paul stumbles upon his father's ring and a camping shelter. Later, Leto awakens with Baron Harkonnen, where Yue's plea for his wife's freedom ends in death. Harkonnen reveals the demise of Leto's family and house, leaving Leto shattered. The Baron deploys his shield and leans in. Leto triggers the toxic tooth, causing some guards to perish while others seal the door. Later, people in protective gear enter, finding the Baron clinging to the ceiling. Duncan confronts Kynes for her non-warning, but she insists on neutrality. Duncan argues that House Atreides was sent to die, negating neutrality. In the desert, Paul and Jessica conceal, their Atreides beacon periodically sounding. Paul unintentionally ingests spice, triggering a vision of a vast battle under the Atreides banner, raising concerns about a holy war across the universe. Jessica attempts to soothe his anger, and they embrace. The beacon alerts them, leading them out of their sand-covered tent. An aircraft lands carrying Duncan and Kynes. Paul is addressed as Duke by Duncan. They seek refuge at an old ecological station to escape an oncoming storm. Paul discusses the fear of the great houses and the Fremen's belief in a messiah with Kynes, who dismisses it as superstition. Paul surprises her by revealing knowledge of her and her dreams, proposing to transform Arrakis into a paradise as emperor. The enemy discovered the station, sparking a battle with the Fremen guards. Duncan, alerted by the noise, greeted Paul and joined the fray, sealing the door behind him. He fought valiantly but fell to overwhelming numbers. Kynes led Paul and Jessica to an escape route as the enemy fired at the locked door. Duncan re-emerged, buying his friends time to escape. Outside, Kynes directed Paul and Jessica to flee by aircraft, advising Paul to navigate a storm to find the Fremen. As they left, Kynes planted a device to summon a sandworm for her to ride. She's found and slain by Sardaukar soldiers. Before her demise, she signals the ground, summoning a sandworm that swallows them. Meanwhile, Paul and Jessica are pursued, dodging enemy missiles in a sandstorm. The storm damages their craft. Jessica recites the fear litany, and Paul, following a vision, surrenders control, crash landing safely. Donning still suits, they continue the quest for the Fremen. Paul confronts fears per Chani's vision and learns from another Freeman's guidance. Utilizing Duncan's paranavigational device, they trek on, teaching Jessica the sandwalk to avoid sandworms. Shortly after, they inadvertently trigger noisy drum sand, alerting a pursuing sandworm. Fleeing, they're saved as someone activates a device to divert the sandworm. On reaching safety atop rocks, they find themselves surrounded by Fremen, including Stilgar, who vouches for Paul's potential. Disagreement arises when Jamis questions Paul's worthiness, but Jessica's combat skills convince Stilgar to permit them. Unexpectedly, Chani questions Paul's messianic status. In their journey, Jamis objects to taking strangers and challenges Jessica to a duel. Stilgar forbids a duel with a priestess. Paul volunteers to fight for her. Paul envisions his death as a voice that insists it's necessary for the Messiah's rise. Chani gives him a worm-toothed blade. They duel. Paul spares Jamis. A vision distracts Paul, but he eventually defeats Jamis. Stilgar accepts Paul. Jessica urges his departure. Paul counters, explaining his father's true purpose in coming to Arrakis, not for wealth, but to unite with the Fremen. He expresses their willingness to join the Fremen in the desert. As they venture forth, they observe a Freeman mastering a sandworm, and Chani assures Paul it's just the start.